Hi, everybody. Welcome to Book Talk, Animation Inspiration. Hope you guys are having a great Kuumba Kickback. Today, we're going to be talking in animation inspiration in some of our favorite books, at least here at Black Girls Create. And if they're not your favorite books, they should be. But first, we're going to have everybody introduce themselves, tell us what you've written, what might be coming out soon, because we do have some books that aren't out. We're going to keep it spoiler free for all the agents out there watching, don't worry. But we can just work our way around the screen, starting with Elle in the top left corner.
Okay. I, for one, am actually in the top left corner on my screen for once. That's never happened to me before. I am Elle McKinney. I am the author of the Nightmareverse series, which starts with the A Blade So Black trilogy, A Blade So Black, and A Dream So Dark, which are out right now. A Crown So Cursed is the third and final in that trilogy as part of the Nightmareverse. It's pretty much what if Buffy fell down the rabbit hole instead of Alice. And it's about a Black girl in Atlanta who crosses into this nightmarish version of Wonderland in order to kill these creatures called nightmares and all the shenanigans that happen with that. I also have Nubia Real One coming out with DC, and that's February 2021. So we have February 2021 and then April 2021 for these two. And various other works that are coming out over the next few years. You can always check out the website to find out what's going on.
All right. Go ahead, Amanda.
My name is Amanda Joy. I last year I published my debut, A River of Royal Blood, which is about two sisters trying to navigate their way to the throne. And in this country, in this queendom, the way that they determine the princess who will ascend the throne is in a fight to the death, because of course.
You need the drama. You got to have the
lots of chaotic things ensue from there. But the sequel to this will be coming out in March, and also the paperback, which has a new cover with just the main character on the front that I'm obsessed with. I wish I had a copy to show you guys, but yeah, those will be coming out in the paperback in February and the final book in March.
Ooh, exciting. Man, 2021. Y'all really, 2021 is coming to make up for all of the mistakes of 2020, I guess. Go ahead, Tracy.
Book galore.
I would hope that it comes hard, show up hard 2021. We need you. So my name is Tracy Deonn, and I am the author of Legendborn. This is my debut novel. It is out next month, September 15th. It's about a 16-year-old Black girl who has reason to believe that a secret society is connected to the mysterious circumstances of her mother's death. So she decides to infiltrate this secret society. And then they reveal that they are the descendants of the Knights of King Arthur and the Round Table, which makes everything more complicated. And there are demons and trials and combat sequences and all sorts of really fun fantasy tropes that I turn on their heads. And then in November, I have a story in the Star Wars From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary anthology. And that'll be out November 10th.
That is super exciting. I don't properly go to Star Wars, but I already know there's tons of people in our community who are stoked when that news dropped. So that's super duper exciting. And just for everybody watching, if you want to pick up any of these books because you're behind on the times or you want to pre-order, we have the links to all that in the description below. And I think we've also tweeted out on Twitter. You can also find it at blackgirlscreate.org/Kuumba Kickback. All the places. And you can also find all these lovely ladies on Twitter, and I'm sure the links are there. So just, there's really no excuse. Go bless your lives. Bless up. So with that said, I just want to start. So first of all, this all came to be actually months ago at our last Kuumba Kickback, Black Girls Fantasy Worlds. And after that happened, we got into a conversation on Twitter with Rosie, who isn't here today. She couldn't make it, but a whole Twitter thread started, and we started talking about like animation and how, you know, it inspired some of y'all's work, and so we pulled together this panel months later than we thought it would be. But it's been a weird year, so here we are. So really, we just want to all get together, geek out about animation stuff, and also y'all's books. So I want to start very basically. Let's start at the top. What is your favorite animated show and why? If you want to, and also just to be clear for those, and we're saying animation, but that covers animation, anime, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm. That's a tough one.
Oh, is that me?
Anybody can pick it up. Just
okay.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm definitely one of those people where if I have just watched something I loved, it's my favorite thing. And I just rewatched Hunter x Hunter for the first time, and I loved it so much. I loved it so much. There's so much storytelling in the show and in the manga that is so special and so smart. It's really up there for me for sure.
I haven't actually watched that yet, but I hear nothing but good things. I'm currently myself in a Naruto rewatch, which if you've ever watched Naruto, it's 10,000 episodes. So I'll be in it till the end of the year probably. But once that's over, I'll pick it up.
Yeah. It's quicker than Naruto. It's a tight 148. Yeah.
I've only seen Hunter x Hunter as the person who's walking past my partner watching Hunter x Hunter. Walk through the kitchen or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's Hunter x Hunter. So I have images in my mind that are disjointed, but it looks really quality. I remember thinking, okay, I can start from the beginning. I feel like my safe answer, and I say safe in that I feel like I can always stand by it, is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, just for story, for character arc, for fight sequences, for music, for art direction, design, philosophy. I mean, it hits on all cylinders. I just love it. We could probably talk about that, for a whole hour. And then, but on the anime side, I'm gonna give an anime example. This is old school, close to my heart nostalgia, but I really love the Tenchi Muyo in Love movie. The show was one thing, and there's all sorts of weirdness with Tenchi now that I look back on it, but the movie I really love the movie. There's time travel, and you get to see the previous generation, and they don't try to act like Tenchi's amazing. They put him in a position where all the women around him are, which is typical, but all the women around him get to really shine, and the music, and then the theme song at the end is bomb.
Man, that could also be a panel talking anime theme songs.
Yeah,
y'all.
I did a thread not too long ago that was here are some openings for anime. The music is just
word.
Yeah. I have to find it and retweet it. But it was
please do.
Gifts of there's at least 30 of them. I am kind of like you, Amanda, where it's if I just finished recently watching it, it's my favorite thing of the moment. You can't ever be what is your favorite of all time? I could get an answer. I mean, obviously it's gonna be Sailor Moon. If somebody gun to your head, this is your favorite every single time, hands down. But I have a top 3 that rotate depending on what I'm watching. So it's Sailor Moon, of course, Avatar, and D Gray Man, which is another anime that I really enjoy. And it's not D Gray Man Hollow. Not saying there's anything wrong with D Gray Man Hollow, but I really enjoyed the original D Gray Man. So those are my tops. And yeah, it's. You could ask me, right now I'm on a Ronin Warriors kick because of Twitter. So I went back to that because, that was one of those things that I also really loved and had. Actually, there's somewhere in the mess that is my apartment packed up right now. So, that's. Don't ask me what my favorite is. If it's not Sailor Moon, I'm gonna have a million answers for you because it depends on my mood.
Okay, I mean,
that's pressuring me to watch D Gray Man for some time now.
It's so good. It's one of those things. I hate it when people are you have to watch a few episodes to really get into it. But because I'm if it doesn't hook me from the beginning, then why should I bother? But I don't know. D Gray Man is one of those that it can hook you from the beginning, but it's also one of the ones where it takes a second and introduces everybody. Because this is right after 90s anime finished, because 90s anime had one episode per introduction of new character. Like you didn't get to meet everybody at once. It was one episode per character. They don't do that now. So it's like caught in the middle where you meet everybody episode 1, and then you get a couple episodes of them just goofing off at home, and then the adventure begins. So it's good stuff though. I really enjoy it.
All right, we'll have to. If y'all can also at home keep notes of recommendations. You could also watch this that way because they're gonna be flying, I'm sure. Also, somebody make a note of that for me because I have not seen that.
It's so good. It's so good.
Okay.
I just thought something else. Like this is gonna sound very like, oh, she's just trying to tie it in, but I'm really not. The Clone Wars, like this is digital animation.
So, okay. Yeah.
That show, there are some episodes that I can't rewatch because it is painful. Like the stuff that when you think about the Clone Wars as an arc, really it's not, some people might say, oh, it's Anakin's story, but it's also so heavily the clone story and what it's like for this group of people and what their lives were like. You've got to meet so many clones. I just thought that took a very huge established canon to a different place in a major way, and they did not pull punches.
No. I think I know exactly what episode you're talking about. Every time that one comes on, I'm like, nope, skip. I can't do it. I don't have the emotional fortitude. I can't do it.
I'm like, where's the Ventress episode? Let me watch some Ventress episodes.
Yeah, see, I know. I don't, like I said, I don't go to Star Wars, but I've heard similar things about Clone Wars, which makes me want, like, I wish I did watch more Star Wars than I do, because I do want to watch that show because people say the storytelling is like,
you don't have to know really like the movies very well. I mean, like you'll get more out of it, obviously, but I think they really were reaching a new audience with that show when it came out a while ago. Like it didn't come out in this sort of like new trilogy world. It came out years ago. And I remember seeing it out of nowhere, and it was like, what is this show? Who are these characters? So, I mean, if you know Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin, you're straight.
Yeah, like,
which I do. I know them.
Yeah, you're good. Then you get to meet all these new people. So,
and what you said about the storytelling is true. Clone Wars is one of the only shows where you know how everything is going to end, and yet somehow they make you like the tension in each episode. It is a masterclass on how to build tension, because you know that folks ain't gonna win because we get the original Star Wars movies, but somehow you end up like maybe hoping just a little bit. Like they managed to do it, and I sit in awe at the end of the episode. I'm like, why am I so anxious? Like I know what happened.
You're like, I already knew the game. Yeah, here I am.
Right. Well, but the the really hard part of it is like you're sitting there and you're like, so that somebody gets introduced and then they'll have them around for a while, and you're like, oh, I like that person. You're like, wait a second, I ain't never heard of you.
Exactly.
Oh, feel like torn, you know.
That show, man.
I didn't mean to bring us to this emotional place.
No. I mean, that's good storytelling. That's what we're.
That's exactly right. It's good storytelling. So, what character, storylines, aesthetics, etc., any of that stuff in animation have inspired you in your works? It doesn't have to be. I know we've talked about our favorites. You could pull from stuff that isn't even your favorites, and also anybody could take it. Just
specifically, I feel like, I don't know if aesthetic or like any particular like vibe, but my favorite anime thing is conflict resolution through combat. It's just that's what I love in storytelling the most. A really compelling fight with a strong emotional component, and that's what anime does best. And I feel like it teaches me so much in that way. And my favorite extremely emotional fight scene is that not the first Naruto Sasuke fight, but the like one at the end of the first series.
Yes, okay.
That's like the fight that I always want to be able to reference in my work. Like that's the fight I always there is just comes a point where these two people have whatever tension is between them, and they're gonna fight, and they're gonna like unlock some emotional emotional thing they haven't realized through that fight.
Mm-hmm. And so much of that, with that fight in particular, so much of the conflict of the rest of the story is built on that the emotional journey they took during that fight. It's so good. I'm in the middle of the rewatch, so I'm feeling very strongly about this in particular. But yeah, absolutely.
I would say I've cited this before on Twitter plenty of times. I did it recently, but like the revenge Katara, sort of Katara, the like crystallization. I say that because it's like we get like one episode really where this all comes to, you know, a crystallization moment for her. It was always there in her, this, you know, this sort of like black cloaked Katara who like was really able to sit in her anger and her grief. And I really identified with her personally. And then in Legendborn, I mean, the prologue starts in acute grief. In the hospital, her mother has just died, and there's a sort of a little, you know, simmering pot of the rage and the anger, and then it carries her through the rest of the book. And I just remember watching that episode and being like, I want to hang out here. Like, I want to hang out in the aesthetics of this episode. I want to hang out in the vibes. I wanted to hang out because I'm like such a Zutara shipper. That's real. I want to hang out with these two because of what they are connecting over. They're connecting over rage and grief and, you know, a sense of injustice. And like, you know, they're connecting over sometimes you're fighting somebody or going after somebody because you're angry with them. And that is the reason. And that is enough of the reason. And like the moment in that episode where she is getting ready to go and Aang is like not happy with her for all of the good quality Aang reasons. I just remember watching that episode and being like, boy, if you don't bet like,
I'm trying to keep it chill. We're talking about animation channel, but I'm a hardcore guitar shipper and I'm out here. This is my ministry.
It's our time.
I remember being like, you need to like shut it, little boy. You need to shut it, because this is the thing that needs to. She's older than you. She's carried this pain for a long time. Let her do what she needs to do. And yeah, so that's really, I mean, you'll see it all over Legendborn when you read it.
That is what we love to see it. Truly. I just absolutely 100%. I have nothing to add. Yes.
I'm trying to think, well, because I have literal things where Alice, when she's a fan, like she's a fan the same way I'm a fan. So she cosplays and she wears like Triforce t-shirts, and you know, she quotes random pop culture things, and these people from Wonderland are like, what are you talking about? Because they'll know that these things kind of exist, but they don't know it the way that we know it, you know. So and then other characters absorb it by osmosis. But she'll do these things where, like, when she has to purge a nightmare after she kills it, she'll say cosmic moon power. And Hada teases her for it. He's like, that doesn't do anything. And in the background, she's like, will you let me live? Like,
let me have this.
To destroy dark creatures with light magic. Let me have this. But things that
LARP, what you gonna do?
Right? Like, I'm for real life. Like, leave me alone. When you saw me, I was dressed as Sailor Moon. When you first met me, I mean, I was a hot mess, but I was still dressed as Sailor Moon. And so, but I love, one of my favorite things that I take, particularly from anime and even from, you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender, even though the members of the team swapped out every now and then, it was, you know, the main trio, and then it goes on to include like Toph and Suki and all them towards the end. But I love the 5-man band. Like, you have those groups in the anime, like the main core characters that show up all the time. And then you have the folks that, you know, migrate around them. I love that, and I love bringing that to my writing. Like, you'll very hardly ever have a book that focuses solely on one person. I don't want to say always, because then it'll happen. I'll contradict myself in the future at some point. But I love it where you have those character dynamics to play off of. That's my favorite thing from a lot of anime, is seeing the characters together. I love the fight scenes. I love the powers. I love the magic. I love looking at stuff going, oh, that's cool. But I really, really enjoy the character interactions and how people manage to be both obstacles and means to overcome said obstacles.
We have a question for you, Al, from the comments.
Okay.
It's two questions really. But also, if y'all are also Sailor Moon fans, we could open it up. As a Sailor Moon fan, does mythology or fairy tales impact your work at all? And do you see Usagi / Mamoru?
Mamoru, yes.
Yeah, it's not Sailor. I don't watch Sailor Moon. And I feel like I've been exposed as a healthier romance.
Okay. I think it's a bit of both, because Alice in Wonderland is a fairy tale, but it has its own mythology that has, like, it's one of the reasons why it is retold or rehashed or reimagined. I like to call mine a reimagining because it doesn't follow the same story beats. But I do both. I like to do a mix of fairy tales and mythology because they feed each other, I think. It's hard to tell where a myth stops and a fairy tale begins, or vice versa. And for Usagi and Mamoru, I think Crystal helped because they closed that gap. Because what did he like? She's 14 and he's like 21 or something like that in the original. Because he's in college, if memory serves. And that's another thing with anime. I remember being a kid. I'm like, wait, they are how old? That is not. Okay. But I think Crystal does it better. It still has its issues because, I mean, if you're a fan, you know that Chibiusa shows up and that gets weird. Like, it's there. It's what I'm gonna say. It's not like my oh my god OTP, but I mean, I think Crystal does a better job.
I think that's fair. The comments are like, oh, exposed, which I am, but I will say I have watched Sailor Moon just a very, 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 very long time ago, so I don't have much to build on, but I believe your answers are correct based on my vague knowledge.
I have like 4 Sailor Moon Funkos like around my head. So
oh, you sure do.
yeah, I love Sailor Moon. Yeah.
So who is one of your favorite characters from a show? Again, can be any show, doesn't have to be the ones we've discussed. And which of your characters has most in common with them?
Okay, I know one. Can we do? Is it main character or any character?
Any character.
Okay, I'm gonna say that Hada as the love interest in one of them. in A Blade So Black is he's very much an original concept, but I was inspired in a way by a couple characters. Is Lavi from The Gray Man, which go watch it, and Duo from Gundam Wing. Those are the two that I know for a fact I'm like, this character kind of embodies, because those are my favorite characters from the show, kind of embodies them and what I like about them. You know, their sarcasm, they're sometimes dry, but sometimes over the top, humor. He's not as animated as some of them, but that's who I would say is the one person I can be like, oh, that. And it's probably not super recognizable, but that's what I got.
I mean, that's the thing about, like, we're talking animation inspiration in your works, but also, like, to give people ideas when they're, doing their own thing in their own, whether it's writing or whatever. Inspiration, something can be directly inspired, but it just takes on a whole different form once you're done creating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, anything you create is automatically a reflection of you. So even if 2 people have the same idea, they're working through the same archetype, it'll never really be the same. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. I think probably the character who's most like inspired by like some of my favorite anime characters is Baka, because he's sort of filling that that teacher role, which I love. Tend to be like some of my favorite characters. Like Kakashi is
one of my favorite. Yeah.
You know, everything to me. And also he sort of combines this element. You have this sort of like chaotic character who in anime usually queer coded, but obviously in the book Baka is queer. And so I think he really is an amalgamation of lots of different characters, like a little dash of Hisaka, like a little dash of Kashi, lots of different things.
I feel like I kind of answered that one already. I'm sitting here. I've been sitting here thinking like, what can I say that's not a spoiler since my book is not out yet? And I feel like a lot of my answers will make a lot more sense at the end, which means it's a spoiler, so I can't say it. But
fair enough.
I'm thinking like there are dynamics that I feel like I try and replicate. Is not so much individual characters or story arcs, but like this is like, you know, not everybody's favorite show for lots of good reasons, but like I really love the dynamic between like the Urahara character in Bleach. So if you remember, like Urahara and Yoruichi, like they grew up like almost best friends, and they had this whole backstory that you really only get piecemeal. So you get this presentation of them at the beginning, and then you're like, what's up with like, you know, they both have a dark kind of past, but they also have had to carry some burdens, and then they have fake identities that they present, but actually really know the truth of each other. And so I think there's a little bit of that, a little shadow of that in some places. And I keep coming back to their banter, and then they're sort of like, they're going back and forth, and you feel like they're just like ribbing each other, but then underneath there's a deep appreciation and love. Like, you know, they really actually love each other in a way that you can't quite capture in one episode. So I think there's some dynamic stuff that I play with, and you know, I love what shonen can do in terms of anime, in terms of like having rivals who actually have deep bonds. That's something that I play with a little bit in Legendborn as well, where it's like these two characters are just like at each other, but the reality is they need each other, and if maybe they want to be the ones who murder each other, but nobody else can, you know, like there's just like that type of relationship that I feel like you get a lot of times.
When you're enemies, but there's a possessive element, you know.
Yes, yes. I just really love that dynamic that you get, and I feel like you really get that in anime.
Yeah.
I'm just over here hearing you talk about, Bleach, and I'm like, just because if you see my face, I have read Legend, so in the back of my mind, I'm like, I see what you did. Like I'm calculating and I'm going through it, and I'm like, okay, but I can't say anything. It's not out yet.
Just have to put a pin in it till September 15th, and then
looking for these references.
The other thing I was going to say, you talked about the 5-man band, Elle, and I just, you know, there's something going back to shonen for some reason. I just recently got into Boku no Hero Academia, and so like My Hero Academia does this so well, where like you get to play with each character's powers, and you see them get more complicated and layered. And if anime isn't the best medium for that level, I mean, even who's using fantasy or magic or science fiction where somebody has a power, if you want to watch the power escalate and it has to get more complicated, it has to level up, you can't just make the explosion bigger. You have to show that this person has a deeper relationship to their ability, that they can do things with it that they couldn't do before. You have to make it, you know, meaningfully bigger and escalate. And I just love that. And I think that show does it really well. Lots of shows where people have like a unique power that's just to them. You know, I mean, Bleach does that as well. I mean, it's a shonen sort of like trope, right? But I love this.
My Hero, I think, definitely does it in a way that is deeper than a lot of shows, and it is more because we get to see how Deku's mind works, and so seeing how his mind works in together with his power, and like it's just so satisfying in such a deep way. I love that show. I could talk about it forever. What I love about it the most is also because like it's really hard to do this in a book, but the way that you're able to see the whole class you would never, like, it would be so hard to do this in a book. I mean, we get like in Harry Potter, I hate to bring it up, but we get like a sprinkling of these characters, and we don't get really any depth to them. But when you're in this animated format, like these kids come alive. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that you have. I mean, that you talk about rival. I mean, that show just is like circulates around this idea of like two rival characters, but just that there are power sets that work well together. That there are people who use certain aspects of their power freely versus others that they hold back. Like I'm thinking about Todoroki, like why he would say, like, I'm not going to do this one thing, and then when you see him use it, that's an emotional choice, not a necessary battle choice. He's put himself at risk before to not use that power, and that stuff is just so juicy. So if you read Legendborn, you'll see that in there, because the descendants of the knights have different abilities that they've inherited from their knights.
I really enjoy the aspect. Like I would love to see a series that takes its time so that we get to know and get to meet characters the way we do in shows like My Hero Academia or other shonen. Because I was watching something the other night that talks about it. Is one of the tropes in anime is the tournament arc, where you have all these characters and they're gonna fight each other for whatever reason, and it's the perfect way to introduce characters that you had in the background. You get to see how they interact with each other because they're all thrown together, and I think that we've gotten impatient as readers because we don't allow for. I think that's why books like Lord of the Rings, problematic as they were, have these wide spanning casts, and we know a lot about them, and we're able to go in depth with them, and you get more out of them than we can do now, because people are just impatient when it comes to storytelling. They don't want to sit and learn about someone. Like everything is like, is this conducive to the plot? Is this integral to pushing the story forward? And it's like, well, I mean, it's Dungeons and Dragons. There's a side quest. Can I go on the side quest? It's gonna be fun. That's the point. No, it doesn't push the main plot forward, but it's fun. It still services the story in some way. I think we've all gotten so, and when I say we, I mean like writing in general and craft in general and publishing has gotten so fixated on this idea of, gotta go now. Yeah.
Type quick story.
Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. Yeah. So
it's so like,
I miss it.
Unfortunate and transparent. It's like so many kids transition out of reading in middle grade and then go read manga and never go back to YA because it just follows a more, I think, natural progression in terms of like the themes that kids want to see, and also that ability to play in the world, to live in the world. Like, yeah.
Like I would love it if books, like a series that I loved, some of these were 7-8 books. Like if you're gonna hook me and I'm gonna be in it for the long run, I do not mind. You know, and I get it that there are some people out there like, well, I'm not gonna buy it until it's at the end. That's people have their own ways of doing whatever. But I think part of I really miss kind of like episodic storytelling is what it is. Because even with the manga, you have to wait for the next issue.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I know I miss it, is episodic storytelling. So
I think it lends itself to the characters more. Like you bond with the characters more through that type of storytelling. And I was going to ask you guys, but you guys already pretty much touched on it. Why do you think animation is such a compelling influence to draw upon in your work as writers? Because a lot of people, I think, view both anime and animation, they don't take it as seriously, when in reality the storylines, like you're saying, are they go so much deeper and they cover so much. Like in their fight scenes, it's true in storytelling, but even more so like in anime, their fight scenes are never just about the fight, unless maybe you're Dragon Ball Z.
Well, even with Dragon Ball Z, you learn so much about the characters. Like one thing, and it's one of those things that we make fun of, anime watchers. It's like it takes a whole week for this dude just to power up like people just in the background screaming while they but at the same time you get a lot, you learn a lot about the characters like Goku and Vegeta, who come from this warrior race, and things happen that don't make sense to us. They're like, this dude, you're literally gonna let this guy who's come to destroy the world get to his maximum level of ability. You're not gonna take him out now, but you're gonna let him power all the way up just so you can have a good fight. Like, my dude, but that makes sense for Goku and Vegeta's characters. Like, their friends are in the background screaming at them about it, but what are you gonna do? What you gonna do? Fight them? You can't make them do anything. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, you get a lot from character.
Also, like, with this like wind is swirling. I mean, the thing I love about anime is like how much time you get to see somebody's power show up, and you're like, nobody attacked you.
They just waited. They really gentlemanly.
That would be impolite.
Sailor Moon does it best, right? You have a whole transformation sequence. I was like, she been changing her clothes from maybe 5 to 10 seconds at least.
I have a theory that it happens instantly, but we, the viewing audience, get to see it take a while. Plus, they're like surrounded by light or whatever, and so you can't get close to them because they're like super hot. So I think it happens because it's the same way with Power Rangers, right? Like, you'll see them transform, and it takes forever. They got to go Mastodon and whatever, and everything pops up. But then in some episodes, all they do is touch it, and then you get the really funny like pyrotechnic thing, and then they're there in the suit. So I think it happens instantaneously, but it's slowed down for us. One, so they can fill a whole 25 minutes, and two, so that we can see the awesome power.
Yeah.
But you are right.
Something that I love about anime because oh, go ahead, Tracy. I'm sorry.
No. I'm sorry. I was just saying it's ritualistic.
Yeah. I like how you can pull time apart in animation, and you can do that in storytelling. But animation will teach you about how to focus your narrative eye, and like in animation, like we were discussing earlier, like there can be a really obvious ending, and you're going to that ending. But when the narrative eye shifts, and it really shifts well, you forget about it. So even though there's a seething tension in the back, it just shows you how to focus and know where you want to focus in a story. One of my favorite anime that's a recent one is Mob Psycho, which is kind of like, he's like this 12-year-old kid and he's a psychic. And it's the animation is so special, but also the story itself, which is just about a kid like trying to figure out how to be a kid in middle school, and not really wanting to deal with all this elaborate psychic power that he has. It's just such a classic story, and you can do so much, and it shows you what you can do in any storytelling, really.
I was just thinking, what you're saying about sort of like the clarity and of animation. I was thinking here for the first time I was, when you look at a live action show or movie, we are taking in, as a viewer, we're getting information about the actor, we're taking in the choices that they made, and we're taking in all these the visual of their face and the sound. I feel like when animation, the animation of the character's face and, emotional expression and body movements is a whole domain of craft. And then the voice acting is a whole domain of separate craft. And of course they work together, but you have like a focused energy on these things. And also there's so much more control. Like whenever I watch animation, I'm like, oh, that look someone gave, that wasn't by accident. Like, everything is on purpose because animation is so deliberate and it takes a long time to make it. And people have to all be on the same page about what that frame was. So I do feel like we get a very like concentrated sense of character, where I'm like, I know that you wanted that character to make that face because you drew it and it went with the voice so perfectly. Whereas I do think sometimes with live action, I don't think we have that same deliberate, craft of character work that we're getting. And if, as an actor, if all you're worried about is putting every emotion you can into your voice and not worried about what your body's doing, then I think you are also getting to target the emotion of that character. So there's something very pure about that I think animation does that live action could never do.
So how do you all draw from these inspirations, and what this medium is doing into writing, which is such a different medium? And how do you pull that into your work?
Go.
I think it's the strong visual component that you can actually bring to your writing. Thinking about how things look and making them clear and not being like so superfluous. Instead of being like direct about things. And like I said, with the narrative eye, focus is definitely something that you can learn from animated show. I mean, and also especially pacing from not something like Naruto, of course, but from a really tightly paced show, a recent show, Demon Slayer. That the pace. I've never seen something that well paced ever.
I agree. It's if y'all have not watched Demon Slayer, it's
on my list.
It's a pacing masterclass, seriously. Like very few animes are able to get done what they get done in like 24 episodes. It's beyond, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I think just going back to My Hero Academia again, because it's on my mind. What I love about that show, and what I don't think was always the case with earlier sort of anime that I used to watch when I was younger, is that we see the cost of the power usage on these characters' bodies and their minds all the time. And I remember the first time I was watching it, I was like, wow, we're watching in real time and they're keeping continuity that like when this character uses this power, it actually does damage his body and it affects his ability to keep fighting. And we see it accumulate over time. And so he has to make choices. And I'm just like, that makes so much sense that, these abilities should have a cost. And I think, I think about that a lot. Like, power, I mean, this is a rule of thumb in fantasy, right? Like power and magic systems have to have some sort of consequence, it has to have a cost. There's that, sort of concept. Another one I think about that we haven't touched on yet, but I'm sure we could talk about it is, Full Metal Alchemist, which opens up with cost, and it's always reminding you over and over again that power has a cost and you can't act like it doesn't. If you do, you get in trouble. And I love the stories in anime that like really make that part of the storytelling, because that's where so much conflict and good character growth comes from, when people are looking around realizing that their bodies, their lives, other people's lives could change or go away if you use this ability the wrong way.
I think one of the good things that I've definitely learned from watching anime, and it goes against kind of what you're taught in, I want to say particularly Western storytelling, because there are elements in other ways that other cultures tell story where things like show don't tell don't make sense, especially for when certain things are going on, because anime, a visual medium, will sometimes sit there and tell you what happened or what is happening. It will very much be like, no, this is how it works. Like you're not going to get to see it the way that you would want to see. And it lends itself, like it's one of those things that is so inherent with anime that when you see it, it doesn't, come across as, oh, that's being done wrong. But if you see it in a different medium, like in books, people are like, oh, well, now the pacing is messed up. And it's like, well, yeah, visual isn't going to necessarily transfer to, books 100%, but that same type of story beat absolutely does work if you divest from what is pretty much mainstream storytelling, which is Western storytelling. One of the things that I greatly enjoy is that a lot of stuff happens just because there's no reason for it to happen other than that is something that would happen in a situation, and now people have to deal with it. The characters are very reactive, as well as being active instead of reactive is another rule, where characters in anime, they're reacting to what's happening all the time. Yeah, it might be because, like with Full Metal Alchemist, these things are happening because I'm on a quest or whatever. I'm looking for, the stone, or I'm following rumors. But it could very well be, well, if that's the only thing, then you come into a town, they don't have it, you bounce and you're on to the next adventure. Sometimes we'll spend 2 or 3 episodes in a town because the Elrics are reacting to what happened in this town, because that's the kind of characters that they are. They can't just walk away even after somebody like steals Elric's, like they'll steal Edward's leg or his arm, like run off with it, or they'll steal all of Alphonse and run off with him. So they're reacting to what's happening around them. The world affects as much of the storytelling as just as much as the characters. So I think that's one of the things that we can greatly learn from anime, and just from other types of, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, non-white storytelling, is that these rules don't always work and technically aren't really rules. There, I said it.
You heard it here first, folks.
I also didn't mention this, but I definitely will say, in terms of figuring out magic and how you want magic to work, how you want it to look, how you having a real deep sense to it. There are so many anime who have taught me a lot about creating magic systems, especially Full Metal, and then also especially Hunter x Hunter. That magic system, I think that's probably my favorite, the best, most like solid magic system I have ever encountered.
Somebody asked, you already kind of answered the second part. They had what can we borrow as writers from anime, but they also asked, what are ingredients of a good anime?
Character that you love, that you would fight anybody if they even look at that character wrong. Like, that is what can drive you through a great anime. And like Naruto, the storytelling is so meandering, but the love that you have for him is so deep that it keeps you going through the story. Yeah.
It does. Can confirm.
I think character interaction and relationships is another big one that you could take from ingredients. Is everybody's relationships all affect each other, and like we were talking about earlier with rivalries, they're not necessarily the antagonists, but they have antagonistic qualities. Like, clearly certain dudes don't like each other and will make whole decisions just to mess with that guy over there. And that's a full human person thing to do, which I think we lose a lot in like books. Is people will be like, well, why did that character do that? Or why is this character, especially in YA, they'll be like, why are these characters that way? Because for one, that is a teenager, and there are just ways that teenagers behave. And often it's very much smarter and more, just with more agency than a lot of people give teens credit for, to be honest. Like, people just think that kids are just, anyway, y'all give kids their due. Give these brilliant teenagers their due. But also, I love it when a character does something because they're being petty AF. Because they're just being salty. Like, that speaks to me more than them carrying on with whatever goal or thing that they're trying to do. When I see those human sides, like, she's mad about this thing and she knows that she shouldn't be mad about it because y'all got a bigger thing to do. But doggone it, I'm gonna take a second to be mad about it. Don't look at me. Don't touch me. I'm angry right now. Like, don't even speak to me. Like, I love that aspect. Those are good ingredients, I think, is when people take time and slow down the story for us to get those human interactions and those human emotions.
Absolutely.
I was gonna, I have an answer, but I wanted to touch on what you just said, Elle, and just give a shout out to the visual storytelling of anime where there's a complete break of universe just to show somebody freaking out, or where it's like the background goes away and you just get effect, or if someone's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just said that, and you get the dizzy eyes. And then it goes back.
Mutter.
So someone's jaw drops down, and there's just like in their eyes. Like, I love how, especially like Japanese animation, just the visual sort of language of emotion is so specific, and the more you watch, the more you accumulate the vocabulary. And so then you've been watching it for a long time, and you just sort of get used to that, and you know what that means. You know what a bloody nose means. You know what like this motion means. So you don't get that, doesn't ever really get spelled out. But once you gain context and you watch more anime, you get to learn that these breaks, these snapshots of another universe where it's really just like a focus on this one emotion this character's feeling, and then it goes back to the story. And I just love that stuff, and the way they animate it, like it's just wonderful. But I think my thing that I really love about anime, the ones that are my favorite, are that when the first time you meet almost every character, but definitely just like most of the new characters you meet, they're there for a certain scene or a certain purpose, and then something, whether it's a look or a change in their voice or a line that doesn't get followed up on, something is a kernel of a whole episode later on, and you just know you have to wait for it. And then when it gets there, it's so satisfying. And I love it. Anime just does this all the time, right? Like they'll have introduce the stern character, and then he'll walk out of a room, and you'll see that he slouches against the wall and holds his arm, and you're like, oh, he was looking strong.
What's happening?
He's injured. Why is he hiding that is an injury? And it might be 10 episodes later, but when that episode shows up, you are ready. You're like, tell me his backstory. Tell me what's going on. And I just think that that's a rule that I've absorbed, is like, if I want you to be engaged with a character, or like for you to just have a flag that character's got more going on than I'm ready to show you just now, have them have a moment where they break, composure, or have them have a moment where they say one phrase that you're like, whoa, why did they use that word? And you don't have to touch on it right then. It's a promise you make to the audience that we will come back to this, and you'll get to know that character more. There's more than what they're showing you. That's just, to me, that's a good rule of thumb when you have ensemble. When you have an ensemble.
Absolutely. Yeah, all of that. I would love to see all of that in works, in books. And I agree. Somebody, Bethany Simaro, is in the comments and really felt it when you guys were talking about, just how Western focused storytelling is in books. And yeah, I think, I hope that changes, as authors like you have these conversations, but also like, I think we're seeing in pulp culture, people are looking to other cultures and what they're doing, which is great. But also I think it speaks to a need and a void that is here in our own storytelling. And we have a little less than 10 minutes left. So if you guys watching have any more questions, now's the time to get them in. I kind of want to end on talking about our favorite animation/anime tropes. They don't even have to be quality tropes. They could be whatever your favorite tropes are.
I already said that I like the 5-man band. But I also really like that one character that everybody like. It really only ever happens once, but then it can kind of happen repeatedly if you do it well. Is that one character that everybody thinks is the slacker or the goofball, or not really serious about this, but then you blink and they done took out the bad guy on their own. Like you didn't see it coming, and I think like now, because it's one of those things that I watch when I would watch, Naruto or Dragon Ball Z, you would have somebody new come in, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna beat you super easy, blah blah blah, and I'm like, did nobody tell you?
They didn't hear tell. They didn't hear the news.
How do you not know? How do you not know? Like, this is the dude who took out Frieza. Like, how do you not know that this is the dude who like fought Kakashi? And how do you not know new bad guy? So I always love that character who is secretly just bad with it, just cold. And people are constantly underestimating them because they're, almost childlike in their how jovial they are. Like the world is very serious, but or what was it? Trigun is another one where
I was
he's
about to say, like, the Stampede is like what you're talking
he's
about.
just a goofball, but then stuff gets serious, and when they, you're just like, oh, okay, now it's about to pop off because now the goofball is serious face. You know what I'm saying? I love it.
Changes.
Yes, I love that. That's one of the tropes that I love. I love that trope.
I was thinking of he's not a goofball per se, but Shikamaru from Naruto, because he's like, oh, this is a drag. And when you first see him, you're like, oh, he's barely gonna do anything. But he could literally like take on any y'all if he felt like it, is the thing. His mind, exactly.
He seems like such a slacker, but his mind is like a diamond. It's delightful.
Or they're like or they're the drunk or whatever, the person who's like always red faced. I can't remember his name, but he's one of the captains from Bleach. He had like the pink kimono, and he was always just laying around somewhere. But he's a captain, so something is up.
Yeah.
So something. I love that where everybody's just like, you're worthless, but this person's here for a reason. So
yeah, he's the one who would show him just be like yada yada, like he's just like really out of it. Urahara is that character. Urahara.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
And then you're like, wait a second, you have a blood sword,
right?
You have Benihime can do what? Like
right.
It's so powerful you can't even really use it. Like, I love that. You're right. That's good stuff. I think the other, like, I love the, like, the big scary with the little friend. And like Bleach has that for sure, because you have what's his name? The little
Kinpachi.
You have Kinpachi.
Oh,
and
yeah,
what is her name? What is her name?
That with that little pink hair?
She's also one of the ones that I was talking about because she's a lieutenant.
That's one of my favorite things.
She's a lieutenant, but she's just like, it's like little Kinpachi's little friend. So I love that, like the big person with the small like rowdy bruiser. Yeah, I mean, I this is not exactly a trope, but I did go off, and I continue to go off about the canine teeth. Like, talk about visual language. It communicates something to you about that character, and when a character shows up and he got pointy teeth, and I just love that. And you're like, oh, okay, so he's for me.
That's my dog. That's my guy. I think my favorite like anime trope truly is tournament. I have been, racking my brain trying to figure out a way that I can plot a YA, just a pure tournament book that's dynamic in the way that a tournament would be in anime. Like my favorite classic anime is Yu Yu Hakusho, which is created by the same creator as Hunter x Hunter, which is very of course of me. But the Dark Tournament, that arc, like nothing makes me happier than that. And it's this most simple, just fight after fight after fight. But there's so much characterization going on and these dynamics where you have these groups of fighters. It's real good. Yeah.
That was a whole season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like the Dark, so that was like 40-something episodes.
Yeah, there's a good tournament arc in Hunter x Hunter too, and he uses that tournament arc to unveil the magic system, which gets completely. That's another thing in anime. Very good self-control in the storytelling, in that you can hold back a whole magic system for a complete arc. Like that still blows my mind. Like, talk about a flex. That's really a flex as a writer. If you make your opening arc so compelling that you don't even need to bring out the magic system until later. Like, you don't even need to. So good.
Yeah. I need you to do that tournament arc. I really want to see and read storytelling that captures the same vibe, because anime just has a feeling, no matter the tone. The tones change, but there's just some underlying like baseline. I don't even know what the word for it is that anime has, where you go in and the rules are different for that type of storytelling. They just are.
Mm-hmm. It's
action.
the extreme heights of comedy and the extreme heights of angst, and the extreme heights of it's all this extreme heights that I love that give you that feeling.
And the stakes are always up to here. Like the stakes are never low. I mean, you could even watch a show like Fruits Basket, and for those characters, the stakes are still extremely high. You know, and which I started watching the reboot recently, and I was like, we'll see how this goes. I'm shook. Like, you know, like I was like, listen, it sounds like it's just a romantic blah 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 blah, but the way that the way the music is working and these offhand comments that I was talking about that are coming back, I'm like, I'm actually a little bit bothered and worried. So,
yeah, absolutely. If you write that tournament arc, be sure to tweet it out because we'll know. Everybody here will know. You don't even have to give spoilers. You'll be like, the tournament book is done, and then we'll know.
it will happen one day.
Get ready. Unfortunately, that's all the time we had. Like, that went by so fast. I really was like just getting into it, but I guess we'll wrap it up. If you guys could go around and tell everybody where they can find you. And if y'all want to continue the conversation on Twitter, you can find them there too for that.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me at Amanda Joy Writes on Twitter and Instagram. I'm all over there.
I spend most of my time on Twitter. You can find me at L on Words, and L is spelled like the magazine. That's ELLE on Words, plural. I'll probably be there right after this as well. Or if you go to llmckinney.com, somewhere, probably towards the bottom, you'll see all of my social media because I'm on other stuff every now and then, but I primarily scream about anime on Twitter.
I am Tracy Deonn, TracyDeonn, and I'm at Tracy Deonn on Instagram and Twitter, and I am in a final push for the last 3 weeks before my book comes out. So if you're interested,
so exciting.
I would be very appreciative. You can do that at tracydeonn.com/legendborn.
Awesome. And I also will say, I just want to go on record. It's even like in a pinned thread that I have, but Elle has this legendary couple of threads about redemption arcs and Zuko. And I like, anytime people have questions about Zuko or his redemption arc, I always just link it. I'm like, read this. Right. So please find that too.
I will discuss all the redemption arc things on Twitter. Just at me. It's cool.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, that y'all know where to find them. We can keep the conversation going that way. And for the rest of y'all watching, stay tuned for all of our other Kuumba Kickback stuff this weekend. I guess until next time, y'all. Bye.
Black Girls Create.
Thank you.